What's up, YouTube? ProTech here, back with episode 2 of Is He Cheating? So here we have a 2 versus 2. And the player in question is this Zerg barcode. Now you're going to want to stay tuned for this one because there's some spicy drama that we're going to be going over after we analyze the replay. But let's go ahead and quit the replay, fire it back up, and then so you guys can see what races were spawned. Okay, so it's 2 random versus random Protoss. And on our team, I spawned Terran and my teammate spawned Protoss. So anyway, the player in question here is Mr. Barcode, who I will reveal who this is at the end of the replay. But let's just take a look at how he plays and see if we can make any sort of sense of what's going on here. So anyway, fairly standard. And one of the things I'd like to note here is that his teammate has a 0 APM drop. This can mean a lot of things: scratching your balls, hitting the vape, throwing a dip in, taking a drink of your coffee, alt-tabbing to change your music. A lot of things can mean this. But I do think it's a little sus that every single time I run into a suspected cheater, we always see that, right? Now, on the map hacking front, or like the cheating front, what 0 APM indicates one of 2 things. Either one, if the player is cheating, alt-tabbing to look at the stream if I'm live streaming, or 2, it can indicate camera lock, right? For those of you who don't know what camera lock is, when the APM registers 0, the camera is frozen in, say, this location, right? But when you activate camera lock, what it allows you to do is it allows you to go over here and look into the fog. But the replay will register you being in this location, right? So camera lock is a very, very good, useful tool that a lot of map hackers use and a lot of cheaters use because it's very hard to argue, right? Again, you could be scratching your balls, taking a hit from the vape, whatever. So one of the things that I would like to note here is that you can see how he's not queuing up his drones and he's over minned. Oftentimes what that will mean is somebody has toggled a camera lock, or they're alt-tabbing or whatever. And this is a top of the ladder game, so typically you're not going to see players doing this unless there's something going on behind the scenes, right? So just keep that in mind as you make your determination on whether this player is cheating. So now we saw the Overlord kind of zigzag there, right? Let's go back a little bit so you can see the Overlord zigzag. See how the Overlord zigzags like that? Well, let's take a look at, so here's the original, this is the second location of where he clicked. Kind of hard to explain, so let's just go back and look at the zigzag again and see if we can find the indicators. So here he grabs it, and then he sends it here, right? Now, I think that that click is very strange considering there is a proxy probe right here. In thousands of games that I have played, the second overlord doesn't do this. Player does not click here and then immediately switch it up to this location, which is creeping ever so closely to the proxy probe, I might add. Then he sets up a camera location here, which just happens to be fairly close to the proxy. And then that little click right there, okay, doesn't really make sense, okay? Again, you need to remember this is like the highest level of play. You don't typically see this. This right here doesn't really make sense. It's very suspicious. So what have we seen so far? We've seen him not building his drones at the right timing after the OV. We've seen an overlord click to this location that makes no sense, and then he redirects it here. And then we see him doing this type of shit before he builds the hatch. Now, one thing I always talk about, if you've spent any length of time watching my streams or you've spent any length of time watching any of my YouTube videos, you will know that this is the type of behavior that we see out of a player who knows that there is something on their side of the map. Now, you may think it's tinfoil hat. I'll leave that up to you to decide. But these are just patterns and things that I see in the hundreds of thousands of games that I've played. And spoiler alert, I've played against this player a million times over, and this is the only time that I've seen him do this, because this is the only time that this has ever happened in one of my games against this player. So just keep that in mind when you're making your determination on whether he's cheating or not. We're seeing a lot of really weird things that don't really make sense considering you're playing against two random. So anyway, goes for the hatch. And then let's see what happens with the OV. So now all of a sudden the overlord is changing trajectory, and it's going here and then back, which is weird. Typically you don't see this. And then we can see a very significant APM drop here again. Very significant. And then he grabs his overlord again. And where's the click? He clicks here for some reason. Okay, so he clicks there. And then, so he clicked here, and then now all of a sudden he's changed to click right on top of the proxy. Right? So if you've been following this video and you've been watching it for the past 8 minutes, can you kind of see how all of these little things that I talk about all the time that may sound tinfoil hat are not really tinfoil hat? What we are watching here is behavior of a player who somehow knows, while playing against two random, somehow knows that there is a proxy on the left side of the map. It is extremely obvious by the way that he is playing and his behavior all throughout the course of this game, which is a minute and 6 seconds into the game. But in my opinion, it is hilariously obvious that he's cheating. And then, you know, if you weren't convinced, I mean, he's literally just clicking right on top of the proxy. Right? So let's see how the behavior carries on here. Let's see, did he switches? No, he didn't. He's been switching everything. You know, I mean, if he was worried about proxies over here, which obviously he was before with the waypoint, why doesn't he just check over here? Or like even back here? Like, why does he seem so concerned about this particular click? Right? And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, it is extremely, extremely, extremely rare to scout a proxy this early. Very, very rare. And then, of course, he peeks into the fog right over top of the proxy. And then you saw his camera kind of go up before the probe came into vision. Let's go back and watch that real quick. I might have been watching things too fast, but you can see here how his camera peeks into the fog over the top of the proxy, which is right there. And then you see how his camera is centered on this probe. You can see how his camera kind of goes up a little bit as if he's following the probe. See that? So he peeks into the fog over the proxy, and then his camera follows the probe in the fog before it comes into vision. He seems to be like really, really concerned about this area, right? And then now he spots the proxy. So I'm going to leave it up to the comments to decide, but I think this is pretty obvious based on everything I've said. But let's just get into the juicy drama here, okay? So if you've made it through the video this long, thank you for that. After the game, what I did was I held a conversation with this player. And I sent him these little dot messages. And the reason I did this was because if I'm going to continue playing against this player, I want to be able to see if that's the player that I'm going to be playing against so that I can warn my teammate and tell him, hey, this type of proxy play is not a very good idea because he's going to find it, right? So I then proceeded to go to SC2 Pulse, where after the game you can copy the links of players and you can plug it into this website and it'll give you the battle tag of the player. Well, as it turns out, the player is a player that I have, well, to give a little backstory on this player, which is right here. This is the reveal. Maybe like 2 years ago or so, this guy was a viewer. And he admitted to stream cheating, and then he said he would stop. Well, he didn't stop. And based on this replay, because you guys have to remember that even if I'm live streaming, there still is a delay on the stream. And we can clearly see in this replay that everything that he was doing was in real time. Okay? There's like, you know, between like a 5 and 10 second delay on a live stream, even if there is no delay. In other words, what I'm saying is what we're seeing in this replay, it can't actually be done unless somebody has downloaded Map Hack, right? There's no way to do that. So anyway, the player is Water Me Lone. There's been a lot of controversy about this guy over the past couple of years. And I think this replay proves beyond a reasonable doubt that he's cheating. But you can see in the text here where, you know, he's just, are you AdNap? Are you Protec? Blah, 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 right? Well, you can see down here where I say, okay, show the replay. Otherwise, you're on the next YouTube video, right? Now, what he was saying, if we look at the text here, is that my ally told me care proxy, right? I just followed him. So one of the ways that he could have exonerated himself is by actually showing the replay from his perspective so that I could see the game chat. Because when you load up these replays, you can't actually see your opponent's game chat. But if he were to have shown me the replay, then I would have been able to confirm that it was in fact his teammate who was cheating and not him. Well, of course, I asked him this, and as you can see in the screenshot, he never responded. So I don't know. You tell me. Is he cheating?